probably super loud because I'm like, is this super loud as I type?
It's fine. We can't hear you. Your noise gate's working fine.
Can you guys
We
hear
are,
that?
however, live.
Can you guys hear that fan?
No.
No.
Good.
This is great podcast material right here. Hello to all you Patriots out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 91 of Canadian Patriot Podcast, the number one podcast in Canada. We're recording on Monday, July 31st, 2017.
Hi, I'm Gavin, business owner, gun enthusiast, hunter, atheist, content provider for Toxic Kodiak Pathfinders, and host of the Greater Toronto Area chapter of the Tactical Beard Owners Club.
I'm Tim, a sports shooter, father of 3, and the owner and operator of Tim's Good T-shirts, so they're quite good. I'm a proper-handed descendant of beer-drinking immigrants.
I'm Marty, hunter and sports shooter in rural southern Ontario.
As always, my name is Andrew. I'm your host. I'm a recovering libertarian, a competitive shooter, and a firearms instructor for Ragnarok Tactical.
We'd love to hear your feedback about the show, so please visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com / feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. We'd also love some iTunes reviews because it's been a while since we've had one of those. And if you leave a 5-star review in the comments section, put down something you'd like me to drink for an episode. Edited version of the show is available on Stitcher and iTunes.
And as always, if you so desire, you can check out the podcast at facebook.com / Canadian Patriot Podcast and Instagram at instagram.com / Canadian Patriot Podcast. Speaking of which, Gavin, what was the drawing today? What was that, dude?
He's from Vikings. That's Floki.
Ah, okay.
We need your help. To support the show, visit www.patreon.com/CPP and become a Patreon. You can get the uncensored audio version of the show for just $1 an episode, and the more you pledge, the better the rewards are.
All right, let's do What Are We Drinking? Gavin, we'll start with you.
I am drinking the Crown Royal Vanilla and Coke Zero this evening.
Marty, what are you drinking?
I have a mixed pack of tall boys from the LCBO, but I'm currently drinking Naughty Otter Lager.
If you say so.
Yeah. All right.
Tim, what are you drinking?
I'm 2 liters into Rickard's Red.
I'm impressed. Well done, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I was watching Game of Thrones. Like to enjoy a pint or 2 or 4.
You know, that's
you go.
Those are full-size, proper Game of Thrones pints, though.
Yeah. I should
just throw an unexpected spoiler out there for the podcast.
Oh yeah. I tell you, when you watch Game of Thrones, you should eat it with cheese and beer and like a chicken for the hound.
Okay, then. I'm drinking Coors Banquet because Banquet.
That's the official beer of the Right Wing Death Squad, the Grey Bruce Stitch Fillers.
And I've lost my show notes. This is going to go well.
I guess we are going to talk about the lockpicking class that I took over the weekend.
Oh, good. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I guess to say that it was just lockpicking would be a lie. It was the covert entry class put on by the core group from the U.S. and sort of the group here in Canada that organized it is a new company, which is True North Tradecraft, which is one of the guys from Tactical Beaver that does that as well. So it was a 2-day class. It was a little spendy, but I think well worth the money because there really isn't anybody up here teaching that kind of stuff. And apparently even the cops and military and stuff like that do learn that stuff up here go down into the U.S. to learn that stuff anyways, because nobody up here is teaching it. So a really interesting training opportunity, a lot of fun, a lot of good people in the class. I'm not going to get into too much on the credentials of the people that that taught it, because hopefully we'll get them on the show at some point and they can give you all that fun stuff. But we started off with basic, lock picking, progressed through that into, for those that know what we're talking about, jigglers and bump keys and things like that, and even how to impression a lock. So you basically take a blank key and insert it into a lock and kind of wiggle it around and look for some marks. And basically you can make a working key from a blank key and a lock with just sort of, a few very basic tools. And then you've got a working key that'll last you forever for that lock. So that lock basically becomes your bitch. And some other fun things like that.
One of my high school teachers was a jiggler.
I believe you mean gigolo.
No,
That's similar. I'm sure they jiggle a few things, but a little bit different.
this guy he needed some powder, I think.
We also learned how to make pretty much every elevator in North America our bitch as well, and be able to control them at will.
That's where you just press the floor you want and the door close button at the same time, because that works every time, right?
Yes, but a little bit more so than that. Like when you go into a building and you're moving in or out, and they kind of let you have, complete control over that. You can do that.
Get the key.
You can do that at whim. Yeah, and you can turn off card readers and all that fun stuff. So if you're in like a hotel and you want to go to a certain floor that doesn't allow you to because you don't have a key, you can get by all of that fun stuff.
Very nice.
Yeah, so kind of interesting.
How long was that course? It was the whole weekend?
Yeah, so we met Friday night for kind of a dinner and an intro thing to kind of, get to know everyone and kind of shoot the shit, and watched a video to kind of get everybody, in the thought process, and kind of started doing a few things. But then it was all day Saturday, so 9 to 5, and then again on Sunday. Very, very hands-on, learning all kinds of really cool stuff. The instructor, Rob, was a great guy. Good sense of humor, a lot of knowledge. And yeah, a lot of fun. I had a great time. Met a lot of good people networking-wise. Learned some cool skills. And we'll definitely be taking some more classes with these guys. They have a safe cracking class that is next on the list, for me at least, because that's kind of a fun skill to have.
Do they go into any of the sort of legalities of owning lockpicks and using lockpicks in Canada or Ontario?
Yes. So in Canada, like, it's across the board, basically, it's legal. You're allowed to own them. The problem is if you get caught using them on a lock that is not yours, or if you happen to get caught trespassing while you have these on you, even if you aren't using them, they could be used against you, and could be considered breaking and entering tools, which can be an issue. But owning them in Canada is completely legal. Using them on your own locks or on a lock that you have been asked to use them on is completely legal. You don't need to be a locksmith or anything like that to do that. So totally okay to do that and practice and have fun. In the States, it's a little bit different. It varies state by state. For the most part, that's what it is, but there's a few states where you're not supposed to own them unless you are a registered locksmith. But yeah, in Canada, you're good to go, which is kind of nice that for once we have the more relaxed laws.
Cool. So that was how you spent your weekend, picking locks and
making
elevators your bitch?
Yeah, learning how to do all kinds of fun things that I probably shouldn't know how to do. But yeah, highly recommend it to anybody that has the money and wants to learn something a little bit different. Because I mean, I've certainly done some lock picking before in the past, instructor, but it always helps having that in-person instruction, to give you that like crucial piece of information that you might be missing from YouTube, because you can't really ask questions on YouTube.
So what does a program like that run you?
So that program ran me just shy of $1,000 for the weekend, but that included a bunch of tools and some practice materials that I got to take home with me. Hopefully in future that cost will come down, because a lot of that cost was getting some of the training stuff up into the country. But now that that's here, it doesn't need to come back into the country. So hopefully that'll bring the cost down. But money, I think, well spent.
That is a bit of a spendy weekend, but if you get good training out of it.
Yeah, like good training costs, right? Like that's just the nature of the beast, especially when it's, somebody of the caliber that was instructing and the scarcity of it.
So now that you have this all this training and the tools and the equipment behind you, what are the odds that you think you could get past the ultra secure trigger lock?
I would say that it would probably not take me very long. One of the really fun things we did, and actually, was they did a challenge. You had 3 minutes to pick a lock that you should be able to do in, like 10, 15 seconds kind of a thing. So you just had a padlock and you could pick any of the picks in your set that you wanted to attack it with. Only they had one of those tens unit, like a Dr. Ho. So you would stick one pad on each forearm, and every 15 seconds they would turn it up a level. Only 3 people in the class were able to complete that. Fortunately, I was one of them. I got the second best time of 26 seconds, and one of the girls in the class just absolutely smoked it and got it in 16 seconds, which was incredible.
So now, is it that you would lose dexterity because of the electro, or is just the stress level that caused the problem?
Well, it was a little bit of both. So like that was the whole kind of thing, like, with training and firearms, you kind of want to induce that stress level. So there was a 3-minute time limit. Like that's all you had to do this. So you had to do it in that time or you failed, basically. But then also there was that, okay, I've got to do this quickly because the longer it takes me, the more difficult it is. And it's not that you would lose dexterity, you would lose complete control over your arms, because it would basically pulse your hands up, and like they call it the T-Rex challenge, because that's basically what happened to your arms. Because you would lose complete control of them. So
it's not a continuous, it's like a pulse that every 15 seconds.
So it would pulse. It would kind of go through different sort of, massage functions. So some of them you could kind of fight through, others absolutely not. It was quite hilarious. One of the other ones that we didn't get to do, are you guys familiar with Pie Face, the game? Where you click the sort of wheel and it's kind of like Russian roulette, and then it hits you in the face with a pie. Have you ever seen that kid's game?
I have to say, no. I don't know that.
Yeah.
All right. So it's a game called Pie Face, and basically you kind of roll the dice or whatever, and it gives you a number, and then you click the little wheel, and then it may or may not pie you in the face. They do a variation of that called Mace Face, where they take the whipped cream or whatever and put a little bear spray on it or whatever the strongest legal spray in the area is, and then you have a certain amount of time to pick a certain number of locks, and then you roll a dice and you subtract the number of locks you picked from that roll. So, and then that's how many times you click the wheel. So
that is interesting.
So that certainly adds an element of stress. So, I mean, kind of luckily and unluckily, we didn't get to do that. I don't think I would have wanted to be maced, but I would have probably enjoyed watching other people get maced.
Yeah, that's my preferred way to be involved in mace, is not on the receiving end.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what Tim and Marty have been up to. I understand you guys had a shoot recently.
Yes, we did. It was good to see Marty. Marty was able to come up and attend that at our local club. We had our 3rd annual Hawaiian shirt defensive pistol, which is IDPA style match, and it was pretty good. We had 14 shooters come out and had a lot of fun.
Do you want to walk us through like round counts or stages, or that was it? You guys did some pistol shooting and it was fun.
It was good stuff. So
I'm
glad I never shot
allocated
IDPA. Yeah, let's talk more. I mean, I've never shot IDPA before, so this was kind of my first experience into the, drawing from concealment and just seeing sort of the IDPA stages, as
and
well as the,
sort
of scoring
too,
differences. Right? And wearing Hawaiian shirt, but there is differences. Like, I shoot IPSC, and so there are differences in terms of sort of the style of the shooting, the points, how things are scored, and things like that. So it was different and an interesting experience for me to go and see this. The stages, they were limited there to a single range. We did, I think it was 5 stages.
5 stages, yes.
5 stages. So like, we would shoot one stage, they'd reset it to a new stage, we'd shoot that stage kind of thing. So we'd all shoot all 14 kind of as one squad. And for doing it all in a single bay, essentially, 5 basically very different stages, kind of, it was really, really well done, really well run. We were able to run 5 stages, including resetting of the stages in between 14 shooters. So we did it between 9 and I think we were done by noon, right?
Yeah, we were done around noon, and then we cleaned up, and we're at the.
Yeah, that's pretty good timing.
Yeah,
had beer and wings at 1, and it was nice. We had the 4 RSOs, and we have a couple of regular helpers. We're lucky enough to be able to use that range as we see fit every other Tuesday from like 5 o'clock until like dusk. And so we're pretty adept at switching it over and using what we have, and we always try to do. Each RSO creates 2 stages, and then we always try to like outdo the other RSO for like creativity and like fun factor. So like, for instance, I did a stage where you were sitting at the pool side waiting for your turn to swim with the dolphins, and then there was a differently abled boy body person in the pool, but the chemicals in the water made the dolphins freaking gay, and they attacked the boy body person. And so like, it's kind of like we had 4 IDPA targets turned 90 degrees, like facing inward on the nose shoot, and you had to like put 1 round in each of those, do tactical priority, and put 1 round into each dolphin, and then a follow-up round into each dolphin, and then you were attacked by 5 PETA types who were there. They were planning on freeing the dolphin from captivity anyway. So when they see how you just shot 4 dolphins, they went crazy and they attacked you. So, and they were all intermingled with other hostages themselves too, like shoulder to shoulder and overlapping. And there was pass-throughs and no shoots for covering them. It was just a big chaotic mess kind of thing, but a lot of fun like that.
Yeah, that was a fun stage. I think the other one, the good one was Tyler's stage, Tyler's second stage. So if for those who came to the Podcasters charity shoot, the helicopter platform made an appearance, and this time you were standing on the platform. There was a stack of 3 barrels directly in front of you. So standing on the platform, looking straight ahead, you couldn't see any targets.
This was Big Trouble on a Little Suspension Bridge, was the stage name.
So there was essentially 1 target basically centered directly behind the barrels, and then 2 on either side behind that, and then 2 at about 20 yards, maybe 15, 20 yards back. And so the way the stage was laid out, you had to shoot alternating sides. So you couldn't shoot the right side and then switch over and shoot the left side. You had to go 1 target right, 1 target left, 1 target right, 1 target left on that moving platform. And so it became kind of like a surfing stage where you were intentionally rocking the platform back and forth and using the leverage and the angle of the platform to get on either side of the barrels. So that was really super fun because you're just kind of like kicking it to side to get around the barrels.
yeah, you would eventually, by the end of the stage, you're using the prop to your advantage.
Yeah.
If you could get the balance right. And one interesting thing was one person had a round enter the barrel. Like I shot the barrel and it glanced off. Someone shot the barrel and it passed through. But then a third person shot the barrel and it entered the barrel and almost broke through on the other side. But you could see like where the barrel turned white, where the bullet almost came through. But then it snail trapped it. And so the RSO was distracted for a split second. He said, all I heard is the bullet just go zzz around the inside of the barrel as it spun around. It's just...
So on that stage, I had a sort of catastrophic failure where my gun just locked up entirely. I didn't like after firing a round, it didn't return fully to battery, and it basically got to the point where I could not rack the round out, and I couldn't get the slide fully into battery. I was shooting a new pistol. It came in the mail Friday. I shot it in the match Saturday. So it was.
That's always a good idea.
Yeah. Thanks, Canada Post.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, myself, Tyler, and Tim all worked at trying to get the slide to move. I mean, it was substantially locked up. Tim, I think you were the one that eventually got it to break free
without breaking or marring the gun. That was amazing.
Yeah,
but
it was
for any listeners out there, if you're ever on a practical pistol kind of, or a defensive pistol or a combat pistol kind of stage, and your slide locks up, the very first thing you do is you maintain, like if you're in the kind of course where the RSO expects you to clear that like in a timely manner, like to take charge and clear it. The very first thing you do is you grab with your not strong hand, your less strong hand, you grab the top of the slide, and then you take your hand off the grip, pull it back, and then you just drive the grip forward like with as much power as you can without losing control of the slide. And that normally works. That frees up like 9 out of 10 from what I've seen with slide locks in RSO over the last 3.5 years in defensive pistol. But then this one was really like, I just like, oh, just do this. And I thought like, I told Marty, do this. And I thought he'd strike it, and then just like, well, that didn't work. So then I kind of went up and offered to take it, and I struck it. And I thought it'd be cool. And Marty would go, oh, that works really well. You showed me something, Tim, but it didn't happen. It was still locked up like a son of a bitch. And then it was, because it was Marty and not someone else, we put some tape down on the barricade, and we were able to use the we set kind of like where the guide rod goes on a 1911 against the tape on the barricade, which is made by Tyler Gerard, so it was sturdy as fuck. And then we drove the grip forward, and we were able to finally get the round out that way.
Well, actually, we were never able to get it to back off. Eventually, we were able to get it to chamber.
Yeah.
We were able to drive it fully into battery and then fire the round.
Oh, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. So we fired the round, and then the force of the recoil was able to extract the brass out. Now I grabbed the brass off the ground. It didn't look bulged. It looked okay. Really, we had no idea why it locked up. And luckily, the guys gave me a reshoot on that stage due to the malfunction, which I very much appreciate, because that was a super fun stage, and I was really disappointed that I got stopped. Like I was on like my second target when I got stopped. And but I did just to continue that story, I did shoot that same pistol later on that night and had the same issue happen to me again. And that time I just broke the gun apart and took a rod and drove the brass out. And I was able to see on that one what was going on. Is it was actually just the brass was oversized, and on the 9mm, the tapered case, basically the bottom quarter inch of the brass was too tight in the chamber and just for like getting wedged in there by the recoil spring. So I was shooting reloads that I had purchased off of a guy that sells reloads. Like he's an IPSC shooter that just has a Dillon 1050 and reloads and sells them to guys. Because I was trying to
allegedly,
because I needed rounds quickly. Because I wasn't really expecting to have that pistol in time. I just went and bought 2,000 rounds off of that guy, and of that. So once I saw the brass, I went through the 1,800 rounds that I had left at that point, and there was a very small percentage of rounds that didn't drop into the chamber, and then within that small number, there was a couple that like barely made it halfway into the chamber. Like they were substantially not sized correctly. And so I think what's happened is the one that locked up was just one of those, maybe 4 or 5 rounds out of the 2,000 that were nowhere near right, and just got jammed the fuck into the chamber.
Yeah, I did that last season. I had issues with when I was switched over to like a progressive. It's like I was getting batches where like you would have incorrectly sized cases, and it just, when it came right down to it, I had to shoot everything I had and start over. Like it was just, I had to empty the can. It was just, of course I could have ran them through like a chamber checker or took the barrel off, which is I suppose what you did. But yeah, everyone wanted to screw. They all wanted to like funk Marty and just like stop him from shooting the rest of the match. But it came right down to the fact I just didn't want to do the math. so I don't want to add up all those failure to neutralizes and shit like that. So I said, let him shoot again.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it's all for fun anyways, right? Like there's no money on the line.
So, I mean, luckily I was able to find out, and luckily it was just some bad ammo. But, it's always a little bit disheartening when it's a new pistol that locks up like that, because you don't know if it's if there's an issue with the pistol, or, this is going to be a recurring thing.
Not exactly a Narenko either.
No.
The only other question I have was what was the round count for the match like?
Oh, it's huge. You're going to get tired of shooting. In fact, the round counts we have, everyone says they're the best. Everyone knows this. It was around 100.
Yeah, so around 100 rounds.
And by that I mean 80 to 120.
Depending on how many times you miss.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But pretty, just like a real diverse cross section of skills and stuff like that. So
nice. Yeah, I'm sorry I missed it. It sounds like it was a lot of fun.
Speaking of missing it, we did a scientific experiment. We did an observation scientifically. We didn't set out to do an experiment. It just the data was there, and we recognized it and picked up on it. And it turns out that 100% of podcasters that come to shoots at our club up in Owen Sound don't roll their trucks.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, the data doesn't lie.
I don't know. Maybe you want to talk to your insurance agent.
Yeah, you might want to do that. Marty, do you want to talk about that, the experience we had trying to get you reloading 45 in my garage last week?
You can start it.
So I think the takeaway from this is Marty's going to buy a Dillon.
Yep.
Because the Hornady progressive I have in the garage could have done better. It didn't do terribly, but it could have done better. It turns out we don't have all the parts for it, so that's fun.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, the Hornady press, it worked admirably. I got 2,000-ish, a little over 2,000 rounds of 45 loaded up in progressive style, and some of the problems that was really slowing it down turned out to be the primers I was using. I was using Winchester primers, which now we know Hornadys do not like Winchester primers.
Yeah, when we were starting with that, when we got it first set up, I didn't even think about that because I've only ever loaded CCIs on it. I never had the primer problems that we had. So we had a bunch of issues with the primer slide not going into position.
Yeah.
Primer and generally just acting shitty.
Yeah. So even like, I mean, we can talk about just the difficulties converting it over, but even once we got it all converted over, when I'm loading the rounds on it, there a substantial number that were like the primer wouldn't pick up a primer, or it would kind of like the slide would like stick back, and then it would stick back, but then the spring tension would cause it to slam forward, like it would break that stick tension, and then it would knock the guide rod off when it would slam forward. And so with every single round, basically, I had to, as I'm coming down, I had to look over, check to see if it got a primer. If not, manually grab it or release it from being stuck, or pull it apart and put the rod back on it. So, I mean, that really substantially slowed down the process of reloading on the Progressive, because you had to babysit the primer with every pull. But luckily, I only had 1,400 or 1,500 of the Winchester primers of the 2,000-ish rounds that I loaded.
Sounds like a Lee.
Yeah.
Once I switched the CCIs, it was smooth. It grabbed them every time. It was reliable. And the nice thing is like when you like kind of finish that stroke, is with the CCIs, you had a very positive, like you could feel the primer being seated consistently. Like it was the same feel every single time. Like you could feel that primer being seated. On the Winchesters, it was all over the place. Like you never knew. And so you had to constantly like pull the brass off and see if it actually got the primer seated in the brass, then put it back on to then continue moving. So like it was hugely different experience running the CCIs versus running the Winchester. So if you have a Hornady and you're going to load large primer, do not buy Winchester primers.
Good. Can I add to that and just say, just don't buy Winchester primers at all?
Yes. I'm also fine with that.
Okay.
I'm disappointed to learn that
alignment. Yeah, go for it.
I was going to say, I'm disappointed to learn that the used Progressive ammo plant press thing that I've got set up, we only have the parts to have the bullet feeder for 9mm. We don't have bullet feeder collets for 40 or 45. So I'm going to have to get in touch with Hornady about that. So I'm glad we have like 3 sets of 9mm feeders.
Yeah, so I was going to say, what's strange is I think you have...
Progressive is shitty.
Is it collets or collets?
Well, I was going to make the comment. What's strange is that they sent you like 4 sets of the 9mm and nothing of anything else.
Okay, so it's important to remember that I bought the ammo plant used on consignment from a store. So it was somebody else's, and they had all of the parts in the box, and it was set up for 9mm. So all I did was mount it on a bench, not touch it for 6 months, and then move to a new house and mount it on a new bench. At which point I started to play with it and go, this doesn't have all the pieces. That I would have too many of a certain kind of piece, not enough of the other, because I was just like, oh, I need 2 springs and I need this one little, this little thing for the indexing, and then I'm all set. It was good, and I never changed it over before we changed it over for your 45 last week.
Yeah, and the case feeder was a bit troublesome until. Case feeder was troublesome until we realized that Andrew can't read the instructions.
Yeah. Okay. So that wasn't the case feeder exactly. That was the case pusher, which has different inserts. And I thought it said number 1, and it turns out number 1 is not the same thing as number 5 or whatever we ended up actually using.
Yeah. So at the end of the night, I'm looking at it and I'm going like, okay, this thing sucks. Are any of these shorter? I don't care if it's the right one or not. I'm putting a shorter one on because the shorter one, from what I could see, would work more reliably. And Andrew starts arguing that, well, the one that's on there is the correct one for the caliber, and pulls up his guide to argue and prove his point to me, and then goes, oh, fuck. I guess that's not the right one.
No, it was a different part.
He helped so hard.
It's a number 1 shell plate, not a number 1 shell pusher. Wrong part of the table. My bad.
Yeah. So once we fixed that, that worked reliably.
Well, that's good.
You want to send me a picture of that those directions? I could probably point out the various typographic mistakes that they were made when they did the instructions. That could have led to.
Yeah, and then the only thing
we're just going to go with I have to read better next time.
And the only other issues that we had were only other issues we had was getting brass or getting sort of loaded rounds to drop freely into the chamber. And that's something we were never able to resolve. And what it came down to is that the crimp die, the crimp and seating die, it has a tapered wall. And so when the brass moves up, and that's how it applies the crimp, is it kind of, the outside of the brass hits this tapered wall, and that's what presses the brass in. And what happens is as that brass slides up that wall, it raises a burr on the outside edge. I mean, as you can imagine, like as the brass rubs along that tapered edge, it kind of just rolls that edge to the outside a little bit. And that burr stops the brass from going into the chamber. And I was never able to get it to not raise a burr like that. And so depending on the brass, like I have like all the enough Norinco brass, I have like zero issues with any of the Norinco brass. But some of the federal brass and cellulite and below or whatever that SMB brass is, that's a little bit thicker. Those ones were a little bit more problemsome. So I have to also on my 45 ammo, I had to go through and individually chamber check them all and sort out all the ones that have that burr. And then just I haven't done it yet, but I'll just take I've kind of just took a piece of 400 grit sandpaper and just give it like one swipe around the rim of the case, and that just rips the burr off, and then they drop in fine.
Do you suppose that's a problem with the dies then? It's got to be the die.
I tried now mine are also Hornady dies. It's a slightly different 3-die set than your 3-die set, but I tried my bullet seating die and I had the same issue with mine. I suspect that if I polished the inside of the taper on the crimp die, I suspect if I put a polish on that, so they would have less it would be less less friction on it. It would be less inclined to rip.
Another made up word.
Yeah, it'd be less inclined to raise the burr on that edge. It'd likely be better, but yeah, I don't know if it's part of the issue is that it's a match like that 1911 is a match chamber, so it's the chamber is to the minimum dimensions, right? So there's not a lot of room in the chambers for any kind of oddities in the sizing.
Well, I don't know. I'm still going to keep my my 2 Hornady presses that are mounted on the bench there. You go ahead and buy a Dillon and let me know how that goes for you.
But yeah, definitely after the experience of switching over the Hornady and trying to run the Hornady for a week or so, it sold me a Dillon. I think it's possibly the best sales tactic Dillon could come up with is here's an unset up Hornady, go for it.
Wow. I'd like to be there when you set up the Dillon to see how much involved it is to get it up and running and see what the caliber changeovers are like.
Absolutely.
Well, we were talking at breakfast with Tyler about that, and we were talking about the Dillon, and it's the Dillon. First of all, it's an expensive press, and you could then, like Tyler would say, buy once, cry once. But the Dillon not only is it an expensive press, but every add-on is so much more expensive. Like when I'm sitting there and like I'm talking with my Lee budget, and he's talking about these Dillon add-ons, and like he's talking about like by the time you get a Dillon 650 running, you're like $2,200 with the case feeder and all that stuff, and I'm like my case feeder was like $48 from Lee, and stuff like, sure, it's you've got to constantly babysit every station, but the Dillons are expensive.
Definitely Lees are cheaper. I know when I looked before at the price difference between the Hornady and the Dillon, if you're looking at like the Hornady like ammo plant, like if you're looking at fully kitted out, I think that they were actually pretty similar in price.
Yeah, I think they are.
If I remember correctly, one is cheaper for the press, but then the accessories are more, and the other one is the opposite. And then it kind of worked out the end within a couple $100. But that's been a couple of years since I actually really priced the two of them out. Could be wrong on that.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think the 650 with the bullet feeder and case feeder and the Hornady ammo plant, I think both work out to around $2,000. And then you just have some other fiddly odds and ends, the shell plates and tooling die and
But
some
definitely
other
Lee
odds
is
and ends.
cheaper. And one nice thing with the Dillon that I'm not certain on the Hornady is the lifetime warranty. If you get the 650 or
Yeah.
550.
And I should interject and add it. Like, I am not going to. I was a Lee fanboy and tried the Champion and always bring Lee up, and they make very good dies and a few other products. But I am not going to suggest or champion the Lee 1000 progressive. Like, I have one, I can get it to run, but it's kind of like having a second wife. Takes a lot of effort.
That's necessary. So anyhow, I look forward to seeing how your Dillon runs when you get your Dillon. The Hornady does have the lifetime warranty, and I've called them before because I've found parts that are missing when I bought 2 used presses, both Hornady progressives, and both of them the previous owner has managed to misplace pieces, and Hornady just sends me new ones. Same thing. I had a problem with a die once on my single stage lock and load. They just sent me new dies. It was totally my fault. I broke the primer punch spindle thingy in the resizing die. I totally just destroyed the piece that punches out the old primer, and they're like, "Yeah, try not to do that again, but we'll send you new ones." And they sent me like 6 of them.
I think that's kind of a staple across the board for reloading presses. Like, I broke a part on my Lee. Well, it broke. It was a piece of shit part. It was a huge toggle, like, that held half of my RAM together. Like my RAM, my handle would connected the RAM to my handle, the pivot toggle, and it looks really big, but it's just a cast piece of crap. But like, you go on if to get any part for a replacement press from Lee, you just go on their website. You just find the part number, and you just order, and you pay shipping. They just give you the part.
Maybe they make that part in Turkey.
Maybe, but I think they're expecting trouble.
Well, I think part of it could be they're expecting trouble, and part of it is everybody does it. If Hornady does it, Dillon does it, Lee does it. If one of them doesn't do it, well, who are you going to spend your money with, regardless of the amount of money?
Yeah.
You're going to go to the one that has the lifetime warranty. Oh, you broke our stuff? Well, here's new stuff. Like, how can you not do that?
Enjoy our broken press.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, they're mechanical systems with, like small springs and things like that, like with parts that are, of course, going to wear out and are going to break. And especially if you're not cleaning your brass first and things like that, like if you're just and you're depriming on the press, there's a lot of like grit and debris that gets into the press and gets into the nooks and crannies and things like that. That's going to wear shit out.
Yes.
Certainly.
I deprime and size offline. But
yeah, I deprime on a single stage, and then I tumble all my shit.
Gavin?
What else we got?
I buy factory ammo currently, but
oh, you clever bastard.
I do have a shitload of brass saved up for when I do actually have the time to get a press and
Must be nice to be able to afford new ammo all the time.
I was gonna say, he's got so much 7.62x39 brass saved up. He just can't wait to start reloading that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got bad news for you.
What's that?
Certain ammo doesn't deprime so good. Ask me about how I broke the resizing die.
Oh, your depriming pin didn't have a forked tongue like Trudeau.
Oh, that's pretty good. Let's talk about the news. We have 2 news things we're going to do tonight. First one's from the Huffington Post.
Ugh.
I know, right? Liberals' draft of a new citizenship guide scraps barbaric practices warning and touts indigenous treaties. So this is stupid. So, if, I guess for anybody out there in podcast land that doesn't know how this works, when you immigrate to Canada, they have a book that you get given. It's called Discover Canada. It's a guide that you get when you apply for immigration status in this country, and it's to prepare you to take the citizenship exam. Because the theory is, if you immigrate to Canada, you want to become a Canadian citizen.
What's the cost on that book?
I believe you just have to get into the country.
Oh, for Christ's sake! They just get in the country and we automatically get them a book ready.
I'm pretty sure. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Like, I'm pretty sure if you apply for citizenship,
I'm raging.
Part of the process. So the last time this book was updated was in 2011 under a previous conservative government, where they introduced things like warning that certain barbaric cultural practices were actually crimes in Canada, so you shouldn't do honor killing or female genital mutilation. They didn't point out it was not okay to do male genital mutilation, but I guess that's a different topic.
Yeah. No, that's totally okay, because, you know, ignoring consent of men and male children is fine, but female children is where they draw the line.
It's part of the patriarchy, you understand?
Yeah, but circumcision isn't against the law in Canada.
Yes, but it should be, unless you're
still
a
contend that it constitutes a barbaric cultural practice. Cutting off perfectly functional pieces of humans is not necessary.
No. Of babies, whether it's men or women, or those yet to be identified, they're not consenting, and you are removing a piece of their body.
So, before we get off on a tangent about genital mutilation, it's they do divide up a couple things which I think are good ideas in this draft: the voluntary versus mandatory responsibilities. So voluntary responsibilities, I disagree with what they are, but it's nice that they point out what you have to do and what is optional. The voluntary responsibilities include riddle me this:
taxes,
respecting the human rights of others, understanding official bilingualism, and participating in the political process. Yeah, I know. I read that and I was like, wait, what? What? Human? What? How is respecting human rights? Let me just go to my copy of the charter over here, and where does it say that that's optional? Yeah,
the other ones I agree with are optional.
But hang on a second. But what is mandatory?
Okay, so obeying the law, serving on a jury, paying your taxes, another awesome one, filling out the census, and respecting treaties with the indigenous peoples are all considered mandatory. Why is filling out the census mandatory? I mean, aside from the fact that it's codified in law, why is it codified in law?
Why do I have to respect a treaty with the natives? I didn't sign that, and it has nothing to do with me. The government has to respect that. Like,
no, you have to respect that.
I'm not the one that has to give them ammo at Christmas time. The government gives them ammo at Christmas time. Like, that's not how that works. Like, I have to respect their human rights. Or actually, apparently I don't. But, like...
So, Gavin, I feel like you're making a reference that I don't understand. Natives get ammo at Christmas time?
One of the treaties, I guess, that we signed... Maybe it's not Christmas time, but, like... They're supposed to receive a gift yearly from the government, which includes like food and ammo and stuff like that. So
I'm sorry. Are you saying that the Indians, they made us respect their long-standing love of Christmas?
I believe so. Yes.
Like, what the fuck?
So the actual language from the draft is that today Canadians, for example, can own their own homes and buy land thanks to treaties that the government has negotiated. Every Canadian has responsibilities under those treaties as well. They are agreements of honor.
Right, because
so apparently
no Canadians own home. I was gonna say no Canadians had homes before the government. Apparently that's we only got homes once the government.
Yes, without the government, who would the houses?
Yeah, if it wasn't for the government, the natives would just come and kick us all off their land.
I guess. So anyway, to answer Gavin's question, that is why we must, as Canadians, respect our Indigenous Peoples Treaties.
That's ridiculous. That, and I just looked it up
That's
here.
what's
So
in the draft of the book, man.
Is that why Trudeau
for
has
the
that
ammo
native
stuff.
tattoo on his shoulder?
No, that's because cultural appropriation. He's trying to win votes.
Oh, see, I thought he was saying like,
Yeah, so,
haha, natives, I'm the one who's stopping you from taking people's
treaty annuity payments
Look at me.
are
I'm
paid
the native
annually on a national basis to registered Indians who are entitled to treaty annuities through membership to bands that have signed historic treaties with the crown.
Trudeau's like,
So maybe it's not at Christmas time, but
I'm the chief now.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
just look
sorry,
at my
those treaty
tribal
annuities
armband.
Yeah, so the administration of treaty annuities falls under the Indian Moneys Program, which is responsible for the discharge of the Crown's treaty obligations. Depending on the terms of the specific treaty, these obligations can include the payment of individual treaty annuities, the provisions of ammunition and twine for nets, and the provision of a suit of clothing every 3 years for chiefs and councillors.
Why?
How crappy would that be? Was if you were like, if you've gone through the process and become a registered Indian, like under the Indian Act, and the ammo's like, all right, here's your allotment of twine.
Yeah, what if
Could
could I trade my
They don't
twine
even
for
have clean
ammo?
water.
Can I trade
Well,
my twine for
like
ammo?
Yeah, we'll be back in
Yeah,
6 months to make sure you've woven that in the nets, because that's only for net.
Like,
Yeah, but I'd be even more pissed off if I didn't get my twine. Like, dudes, like
I guess
it's twine. You can't even give me the twine that you owe me.
Oh, I should have a long chat with an Indian sometime. First Nations, sorry.
no,
I'm
no,
old.
it's
I'm old.
cool. It's the Indian Act. We're allowed to call them Indians.
Okay.
Oh, until they update the language in the law book.
Is that what they call it? You can go up to them and say, "Hey, drop the
Indian Act. It's the
drop the
Department of
Indian Act,
Indian
guy.
Affairs.
What?
Like, as far as I'm concerned, that's the correct term because that's what it's codified in
I'm
law.
curious. So if they give this book out to recent immigrants, is it only recent immigrants that don't have to respect the chartered rights, or is that like anyone that's a citizen? Like if you're a born
No, guy,
citizen-
that's your social contract. You were born here. You have to respect it.
That sounds like a bait.
Ah,
It's a bait.
that sucks. I mean, because that could be our out. Like,
Okay, cool. So
Nah,
I mean,
that's
we
not
talked.
that way.
I mean, we've talked about how this is dumb to remove things like saying that human rights are voluntary, and eliminating the spot where we say, hey, just a reminder, female genital mutilation is illegal in this country. So, but why is it
it's-
like? What is the
Say
point?
that's-
Like, why were the Liberals upset that
Like,
this was in there,
but
and why did
obviously
they
we
make
need-
this priority to remove it?
yeah. There's so many other
I'm going to
stupid
go with
laws we
because the
do need to
Minister
remove.
of Immigration is an.
All right, one
I'm
at a
going to go
time.
with John McCallum's a cuck. John McCallum is the immigration minister and a cuck.
Yeah.
He's like an old cock, isn't he?
So you think it's
Oh,
just
that's
him
Supercuck?
looking? So you think it's him looking out for the feelings of those immigrating over the rights of those that live here?
That is exactly what I think this is, because as far as I'm concerned, the current Liberal government is pandering to its next voting bloc, which is New Canadians, which is Liberal speak for people that recently immigrated. So by appealing to that class of individuals, they're vote buying. So we don't want to tell them that we think that some of their practices are barbaric, like female genital mutilation, or that you have to respect the rights of everyone, not just the people that you feel like doing it for, or that you have to speak one of our 2 official languages to receive government services. But as long as you pay your taxes, you're all set.
I'm curious how they feel about acid attacks. Is that a barbaric
Acid attacks are
practice?
cultural they're a cultural appropriation. You have to be of a specific group of people in order to commit one of those.
Man,
Can you get a license?
it's just my acid attack license. It's okay, guys.
No.
Things
Is it
that
like
I-
an acid? Is there like an acid status card?
Can we get the intern?
Like
on that?
I've had acid for years now, so I had acid first.
The Dutch haven't done everything first, Marty.
Just most things. All right, let's go on to the next one. It comes from the CBC. We're misspending money in Winnipeg.
Wait, the government's spending money?
Yes.
All right.
Miss
On infrastructure.
So
the first thing
what
is
part
this.
of this? Do we want to talk about the right? Do we want to talk about the rail line first, or do we want to talk about
I want to talk about the rail line
subtext?
first, and we'll probably leave it at the rail line. I don't know. We'll see how this goes.
I think the two have to go together. But
Yes.
Okay, let's go with it together. So
Yeah.
in
we need the second story
1997,
buried in here.
yeah, in 1997, the federal government sold a rail line to a Denver-based company called Omnitrax. Omnitrax is refusing to repair rails that are used for train service to Churchill, Manitoba, following flooding last year. Churchill, Manitoba is a town and that's home to 900 people. That's 9 and 2 zeros. Omnitrax is saying that this is going to cost anywhere from $20 to $60 million to repair. I have no idea how you do a ROM that's that big, because I do rough order of magnitude on multi-million-dollar projects, and you get a 20% like window. You can be 20% high or 20% low. I don't know how you can have
not
$20 million to $60 million as your window, and somebody think that's an acceptable estimate.
I guess it's the same people that build stairs in Toronto.
That's the one I was going to say too.
Could be
I don't know who
people-
came up with that, but that's
Yeah.
a big.
It could be people who quote on the
Well,
Olympic.
Or it might be 3 times that.
Yeah.
We're not sure. We're gonna have to build it to find out. So the government is saying that they're not going to fund the repair to these rails because it's part of the agreement that when Omnitrax took over, they're responsible for it. Which, kudos where they're due. Good for the federal government for saying that. At the same time, well, we'll get into the subtext of the article in a minute and see what else is going on in Manitoba.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the thing is, so if just to take a second here, you have a small, it's not a village, it's larger than a village. I guess it would be a town of Churchill, 900 people, and this is like the
Hamlet.
Is that
Let's go
even a
Hamlet.
town? Yeah.
okay.
I was going to say,
See, now
even smaller than a town.
now I want ham.
Slightly larger than like a Corners, but smaller than a city.
Yeah, 900 people. We're good. Moving on.
And they have a port, and they have a small airport, and they have a rail line. But like that's kind of about it. That's how they get their goods generally. And this rail line has been down since May. They're getting their gasoline and diesel and stuff like that by plane, and their groceries by plane and ship. And it's just like you got to take a step back. And sure, they sold back in 1997. They sold the railway tracks to Omnitrax, and that was a liberal majority under Chrétien that decided to sell that federal, rail line to Omnitrax. But so here's a majority liberal government that sold a very important part of the infrastructure of the province of Manitoba to a corporation for profit, probably so they could look good when it came time for like elections or whatever, so they could get their debt paid down. But they have an obligation to the people that you can't just sell it to a corporation and go, there, we're done, in my opinion. And this is coupled with the fact with Trudeau having a very different idea of what infrastructure is. When he talks about, the Liberals are going to do infrastructure spending, it usually comes out in parks and whatnot. And sure enough, like there's people out there who are getting gasoline and groceries flown into them on plane, probably at great expense. I saw a video of a guy up there who sells, he doesn't sell, he owns a hotel, and he's really suffering. And like there's just this little landlocked town or whatever, and they're relying on the government, and this Omnitrax corporation isn't really seen to be too keen on spending $20 to $60 million to repair this rail line. So at what point does the government come back in and say, well, regardless of the fact that we sold this asset off, we do have a responsibility to our people. But that just isn't happening. They're saying Omnitrix has to make do and pay for that. So, like, if the government isn't willing to step in and spend $20 to $60 million, what are they spending their money on? Does anyone have an idea?
So
well, before we go to that, let's stick to the Omnitrix thing.
Okay.
So we don't know what the agreement is between Omnitrix at the point of sale, but from what everything I've seen is that Omnitrix has been maintaining this line. This is not an issue of lack of maintenance on this line. This was, this was a Mother Nature type of thing. So depending on the agreement, if the agreement says they must maintain and repair and things like that, they've held that up, and now it's gone beyond where there's been this sort of natural disaster type of issue. And is it on them to do that? Omnitrix is basically making the claim that, hey, this is a public utility, this line, because this is the only way you can get utilities in here. Like, from a business perspective, it makes no sense for us to make this upgrade. We've maintained it as part of the agreement, but now there's been a natural disaster. They feel that it isn't up to them to resolve this. And I think ultimately it comes down to what is in the legal agreement that they've signed, which we don't know. We can't see.
Well, I'm in agreement with that, although I feel that as a business, this is something their insurance ought to be paying for, the same as if it was any other public utility or any other private business for that matter. If they have stuff that breaks, they're responsible for fixing it. If someone breaks their stuff, they're still responsible for fixing it.
You're right, but this is just more of the Liberals' failure to give a shit about corporations and businesses, and doing more about feel-good, stupid shit. Like, it's just like, this is part of the infrastructure. This is a vital link to the town for shipping in goods and goods to Churchill, and it just comes right down to the fact, like, eventually you've got to step up and do what's right for your people. Like, we do this to other countries all over the damn world. We give them, like, millions and millions of dollars and billions
of dollars.
You're right, Tim. I mean, to me though, like I'm kind of more like, I agree this line should have never been sold to this private company, because it is critical for goods and services getting into this community. And so it likely should have never been sold. But this company, I'm guessing based on the articles, when they bought this line, that included the responsibility for this specific section as well. So it's likely is on them to repair this. Without seeing the agreement, it's hard to say, but
But repair and maintenance is one thing completely different from, like, repairing huge sections of the track that have been wiped out by natural disaster.
I still feel like they would have taken that responsibility on when they assumed ownership of the, we'll call it a utility.
Yeah, you're right. And they should have had smart people who go in and assess everything and think about that kind of shit. And and these people would have been paid at the time back in 1997 to do that. So,
yeah, but the one thing that government has a responsibility for, in my opinion, is infrastructure.
The one thing the government has a responsibility for is enforcing sovereignty over our borders. But I guess if we're going to say that they could do other things, I'll allow my roads.
Well, that's always the argument, right? Yeah, but I agree with Gavin. Like, the infrastructure to allow businesses to thrive, the governments have a responsibility. That they should be doing. Creating situations where companies can thrive.
So I think it's time now, because as we've all been dancing around this as we talk about the rail system, because it's the CBC, buried in this article, not its own article, but buried in this article about tracks
there's
at the bottom after the advertisement, we have Canada's Diversity Gardens. Now, why this is related to and buried under the tracks issue of this corporate company, I have no idea, but let's talk about Canada's Diversity Gardens.
I think it's because it's in Assiniboine Park in Manitoba.
It is.
Okay.
Do you know what?
the
Do you know what Diversity Gardens? Well, I shouldn't say what Diversity. Do you know? Are you guys familiar with Assiniboine Park?
No.
No.
Okay, so allow me to enlighten everybody out there in podcast land. Assiniboine Park gets 5 million visitors every year. That 5 million unique visitors every year, and
Diverse
is Winnipeg's
visitors.
premier outdoor attraction. Assiniboine Park is an already operating thing. It holds things like the Assiniboine Zoo. There's a family center. There's a sculpture garden. They host concerts, public art galleries. There's an event venue, and they offer educational programs. So it's a thing to go outside and do, right? Like it's got a zoo and a family center and so on.
So what you're saying is it generates its own income.
Right. What they're doing is expanding or rebuilding a portion of the park to be an arboretum. They're building a horticultural exhibit, if you will, and they're calling it the Diversity Gardens. So it will be one more thing in the list of outdoor attractions that you can see when you visit Assiniboine Park. So far, so good.
So
between the federal and provincial government of Manitoba, the cost being incurred
It's got to be like
by the government.
It's got to be $6 million at least.
$50 million between the two levels of government, plus $10 million from the city of Winnipeg.
But if they generate their own income, shouldn't they be spending the money to upgrade so that they could generate more income? Like, that's how businesses work.
One would think that, but I would also like to know government at any level kicking in. I assume that this park is run by some level of government because it is a public space, right? So it makes sense to me that it is not an entirely private attraction, but is probably like owned or operated in some part by the city of Winnipeg.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is that the federal government is 35 million, the province is 15 million, the city of Winnipeg is 10 million, and the gardens are going to cost 75 million. So we're still $15 million.
Right. So,
you know what this is?
It stands to reason
this is
what is this, Tim?
This is the Liberal government basically seeing the word diversity and saying we got to pump millions of dollars into this visibly.
So now
absolutely.
That's a question I have. What's the diversity of the diversity? I legitimately tried to look this up. Is it diversity of horticulture? Like, what is? Why is this diversity?
It has many different plant types.
Well,
or do we just call this the global warming garden so that we can get federal funding?
Literally, the only thing that can be diverse about this is the amount of flora and fauna that's available within it.
Or did you say fluoride or?
No one likes fluoride. It turns the frickin' frogs gay,
and dolphins.
It's a garden. Like it's a garden. It's a $75 million garden. I don't.
Are they gonna have one of those hedge mazes?
I can't grasp.
Like in The Shining.
I can't grasp.
I would hope so.
$75 million
kind of money.
Like,
with that kind of money, they better have the best hedge maze in Canada.
No, the hedge mazes
in the world.
They're too alarming and they trigger too many people. They're too negative.
So, okay. Again, let's just talk about how this ridiculous $75 million government garden has been buried on the CBC under an article about a railroad being washed out.
I wonder how much money the CBC got to bury the article.
They probably didn't have to get paid. They just.
I'm curious if they just have a quota, like they can't have more than 2 articles about Winnipeg. Like they can't have on any given day. There can't be more than one article that's not about Ontario. So they have to just look at a quota. Right?
Yeah. They got to make it look like they're talking about other places.
I don't know. It's not like it's Alberta.
Is that even a province anymore? I thought we just kind of got rid of it.
We just don't talk about it. That's all. So I don't know what this is about, but it's interesting that we're going to spend $35 million of federal government money on some plants, and it's going to cost $20 to $60 million to repair a vital piece of rail infrastructure for a city in Manitoba.
I think I've got it. I think I've got it. So
listeners.
if we plant enough plants, that helps us with our huge carbon problem.
Yeah, but we don't have a carbon problem. We're carbon neutral. We're Canada.
No. That helps us
all over the place.
That's why we have a carbon tax, Tim, because we have a carbon problem.
You and we worked on our carbon problem in February. Burning trees left, right, and center.
I don't think we burned enough of them. Worst fire ever.
We got to do that again.
All right.
Yeah, hopefully when it's not all wet and soggy.
We'll do it on a real February.
Marty's internet is pretty bad. Marty's internet is really bad. Marty, do you want to try and plug your review for the Stoker course for next week?
All right, give me a second. I'll see if I can fix my audio.
Yeah, no, we're just going to go into rapid fire feedback. Your audio is jacked up.
It was doing well a whole episode.
Well, right until now.
Then it all just fell apart.
Our first piece of rapid fire feedback is actually directed at Marty, I think. It's from Braden. He's responding to CPP 89 on pregnancy rates in the West over time. And Braden says, I have yet to find a study that does not show pregnancy rates decreasing over time in the U.S. There's similar studies for Canada and across the globe. Before you say that birth control and sex education has made pregnancy rates increase, do your research. You're spreading lies. If you have research that says otherwise, I'd love to see it. And he sends us some articles referencing data from the last 20 years. Once Marty's back, Marty has data from...
Okay, now or is it shit?
That's worse.
You're like a robot inside of a submarine.
Yeah, inside of a
on
giant
another
rubber
planet.
Inside of a giant rubber duck, being fucked by a tranny in the military.
All right, how about now? Wait, better?
No.
Better, worse?
Better.
All right. I don't know what to do then, because it's... All right, well, a lot of song here. So for you to respond to this, I need to have audio.
One of your carrier pigeons.
This is the time when I should.
We might need to come back to this next. Well, let's come back to this one next week with Marty on, so Marty can properly articulate his point of view. But I think the biggest thing was that we shouldn't be getting hung up on the pregnancy rates in the last 20 years. And we need to be looking at the data over the last, say, 50 or 80 years. Since then, that's what we're talking about. No, your audio is still crap.
All right, it's the hotel internet. I'm screwed then.
Okay, let's do the iTunes review. We have a 5-star review on the iTunes from
Amazing.
Mrs. Dosh. Title: Listen to every show. I don't know if that's something he does or an instruction to everyone else.
It's a
Both.
threat. Sounds
Content
both.
of the review.
Yeah.
Always look forward to each episode. Good topics, good guys, good drinks, good fun. I request that you drink strawberry daiquiris, please. Winky face.
Jesus.
So you know what that means.
We're gonna smell like a sex crime.
It means Gavin and I are getting white girl wasted again.
Oh God, I'm gonna have to try and find some mix because last time I
Jesus.
had to go buy a blender.
Your office
And
is gonna smell like
strawberries.
a windowless van.
Yeah, it's
Dirty
not gonna
Mike's
be good.
F Shack up in here.
yeah. Thank
Milk
you
was
for
a
the
bad
5-star feedback.
choice.
We will follow up with that at some point in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll
also
coordinate.
have,
Yeah.
We have a message from Benny. Benny took us up on the patriotic limericks. We have this to share with you.
There once was a man from Ottawa who, when put on the spot, would and ah. He has more than one nanny, his resemblance to Castro's uncanny, and he often forgets of Alberta. Hope I didn't miss the contest.
So that was pretty good. I liked that.
Very nice, Benny. Very nice.
That was my
Excellent
limerick.
work.
That was my
Yes,
limerick.
Was it?
it was
Oh,
the
did-
limerick.
So it's a reading of my limerick.
We asked for listeners to give us their best reading of your limerick.
Oh shit. See, that's what I get for not listening to you.
So I believe we owe Benny a T-shirt. I think that's what we promised. I'm not positive. We were
Okay.
very drunk when we did that. So I'm going to send Benny a T-shirt. I think that's probably what we're going to do. Tim, I
Is
need
my
you to
audio
make
still messed up?
No, you
your
sound
audio
good
is
now.
better now.
It's better.
All right. Do we want to go back
Thanks.
to that one and you can just re-edit it in order?
No, you can just do it now. That's fine.
We can do.
I just want to take
one
1 second and say thanks, Benny, for the reading. That was very good. Good to hear that. I'm glad you're listening in out there.
All right. So the feedback, I don't even remember this comment. It was just a throwaway comment in the previous, I guess, couple podcasts ago. We talked about sort of, I guess, pregnancy rates. So this guy sent a bunch of articles looking at showing that teen pregnancy rates have gone down. So if I said specifically that teen pregnancy rates have gone up, that's my bad. That's not what I was applying. Or it's not what I meant to say. But basically, it's that and if you look at the statistics, if you look like non-marital childbearing has gone up incredibly with the usage and promotion of birth control and sexual education. And the key is to look at the historical data going back to like the 40s, 50s kind of thing, not just looking at 1990 to now. So when you look at and I've included links in these articles. If you look at like in the 40s, non-marital birth rates was somewhere around 5%, basically 5 to 8%, whereas now it's like, what is the looking at 2000? This in the article I linked, it goes up to 2007. Birth rates are at, was it 40%, 38% unmarried. So if you look at the data, it's very much increasing. I include another article, and this is another article from the Guttmacher Institute, which is sort of a similar one that he used. And this is the issue with looking at sort of teen birth rates, is if you look at teen birth rates, yes, they've gone down, but if you look at teen birth rates, so teen birth rates in the 1950s was somewhere around 80 to 90 per 1,000, whereas now they're around 50 per 1,000 in mid-2000s. Actually, they're down about 45 per 2,000 at this point. But if you look at the percent unmarried, so yes, when it was 80 to 90, 95 per 1,000, less than 15% of those were unmarried. So that's the issue when you just look at teen pregnancy, is that, yeah, and they've gone down, but teens were getting married in the 50s. And so, of course, there was high teen pregnancy in the 50s because they were married and having kids. So when you look at, yes, okay, the birth, yes, the birth rate of teens has gone down, but in that same period, from going from 95 to 45 per 1,000, the percent unmarried has gone from 10 to 12% to 80% of percent unmarried. And so that's sort of the issue that was just alluding to is with the sex ed and with the promotion of birth control, is obviously we've gone to a much more promiscuous society, which has higher risk and a higher percentage of unwanted pregnancies, and that's sort of seen the unwed pregnancy rates and the things like that. So it's just, I guess obviously we didn't articulate it. I think it was just kind of a throwaway comment as we were talking about. Hopefully that kind of clears up some of the stuff.
Good. All right. Let's tell everybody where they can find you, Gavin.
You can find me on Instagram at urbex_GTA, or on Facebook with the Toxic Kodiak Pathfinders, or like with the podcast.
Marty, where can people find you?
On the podcast, Monday nights at 9.
When his internet works.
Tim?
You can find me at timsgoodtshirts.ca or facebook.com/timsgoodtshirts.
As always, my name is Andrew. You can find me with RagnarokTactical.ca. You can find the show at CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/Canadian Patriot Podcast. If you want to send us hate mail, I haven't got enough of that lately. You can do that by emailing feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Let us know how we offended you. Have to apologize to Rod Giltaka this week. I'm sorry we couldn't fit him in. For all of our listeners out there in podcast land, I'd like to remind you that you are the true North, strong and free.